Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, December 18th, 2025. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and change. Yes, a lot of me this week. Why is that? Dave Biddle is at an exotic location. I first thought it might be Monaco. Then I was thinking Dubai. Right now I'm thinking it's the Maldives. But Dave will come back and regale us with his. Hopefully, have some pictures of him in scant clothing getting some sun. But a Thursday show, we are usuals. We are Garrick, Hodge, and Mark Porter, gentlemen. We've kind of been vamping on what we're going to talk about. Obviously, the college football playoff kicks off in earnest this weekend without your Buckeyes. They've earned the bye and will play the winner of Texas A&M and Miami. We will get into that. But first, we're going to discuss a guy who we've been discussing behind closed doors for months, and then it went, did it go public or go viral? I don't know what the current term is, and that is Legend Bay, who had one of the more tumultuous, interesting, choose your descriptor of a signing day. Long story short, Legend Bay was committed to Tennessee. He flipped to Ohio State. There were others who may have not wanted him to make the flip within his family that had access to his social media passwords. And then from there, it was just been tomfoolery and hijinks. Signing day ended with him committed to Tennessee and signing a document. And keep in mind, we're going through all this stuff now with no one really knows what the new rules are or what the new documentation is or what the new acronyms actually mean and why NIL is so close to NLI to make it even more confusing for knuckleheads like myself. Long story short, Legend Bay is awesome, and it looks like he's going to be at Ohio State. Garrick, can you please bring us up to speed on anything I missed and kind of your view of the whole deal and your kind of trip through the rules over the last 24 to 36 hours? And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have video of Legend Bay from Mark to show you, and the word ridiculous was used. So, Garrick, you have the floor first.
Yeah, I won't talk too long because I know everyone wants to see the player that Ohio State's going to be getting in a week because that's the more exciting part now that we finally are very close to having some finality on this whole saga. Someone is going to write a very interesting tell-all in this recruitment somewhere down the line. It might even be us, but it won't be anytime soon if that happens. But yeah, just to sum it up, it's the craziest recruitment I've ever covered for sure, just in terms of both the speculation that was out there and in terms of what actually transpired. And then he flips to Ohio State, flips back to Tennessee and actually signs with the Volunteers. They announce him as one of their signees. And then ultimately he puts out on his Twitter or X account, as the kids call it these days, that his family has control of his social media, as Dan alluded to, and his family doesn't want him to sign with the school of his choice, and he's trying to find a workaround. And Tennessee coaches, it was interesting, apparently one of them reached out and was like, what the hell is going on? But Tennessee, ultimately, I guess you got to give a hat tip to the administration for doing the right thing. They let the kid out of his signed agreement yesterday, which was the only option for them, in my opinion, because you can't keep a kid that doesn't want to be there, especially a kid that has the option to transfer when the portal opens up on January 2nd anyway. So ultimately, I had to do some double checking because I know from what I've heard from multiple sources that Legend Bay was hoping to get it to his 18th birthday and then sign himself, which is why he didn't sign with Ohio State in the first place on National Signing Day. But in the back of my head, I'm like, can he actually do that? I mean, it's past the early signing window. I got to make sure that this is actually going to be a thing. Plus, I've heard that somewhat other recruits are doing. Penn State, for example, with the addition of Matt Campbell, these kids probably won't be actual signees to the school until February. They're just enrolling at the school and then just going on from there and joining team activities. They're enrolling and then they'll actually sign with the team in February. Legend won't do that from what I understand. I assume that he is going to be a signee for the Ohio State. It's going to be a Christmas present for the Buckeyes because I believe Legend's birthday is either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. I can't remember which day in particular. But once he's 18, he will be able to sign his financial aid agreement and should be announced as a member of the Ohio State class. And once that happens, and I have no reason to believe that it wouldn't, this isn't all right, I'm a free agent now, who wants me situation. This is just a kid that is finally getting to go where he's wanted to go all along in the past month. But once that happens, Ohio State's class is going to move from number 6 in the national 247 national rankings to 5th. So the Buckeyes will finish, you would think, with a top 5 recruiting class once again. I know a lot of Bucknutters take a lot of pride in that. But so to sum up, crazy saga, the craziest I've ever covered. But the good news is it does appear to have a happy ending, and not just because he's signing with Ohio State, because he's signing with the school he actually wants to go to. So as long as the kid's happy, everyone should be happy, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's wild. This is a wild signing to have the Chris Henry and Legend Bay experiences kind of do a full circle and end up where they should have is awesome, by the way.
Hey, real quick, Dan, we have a question in here. Did you find out if early signing players can join the team during the playoffs? I can answer that really quick. I've talked with a few early enrollees, and the answer is no, they cannot anymore. It's a rule change for whatever reason. I mean, because why would the NCAA make a rule that makes sense, right? But
seriously.
So school starts for Ohio State on January 12th, and most early enrollees are going to arrive a little before then. It varies depending on who you talk to. But yes, no, they can not practice with the team. They're not going to the playoff games like the crew did last year. So it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. They're just going to be standard early enrollees. And I would guess the NCAA's reasoning for that is they don't want to give playoff teams a competitive advantage over other teams. But, why do anything that benefits a kid, right?
I wouldn't try and unravel a decision from the NCAA at gunpoint. I think they love page views. Look, the playoff is 12 teams. 2 of them we already knew well in advance weren't going to be qualified, and that's still the major topic of discussion. So I have to assume but practically applied, you knew that was going to happen. So I think they like page views. That said, we here at Bucknuts, I jested that Legend and Chris Henry and Sharon Moore should be on the payroll, considering the amount of page views they've gotten us for very different activities. But Mark, let's meet Legend Bay. For those, before we get started here, Legend Bay is going to show up, I believe, Mark, as a quarterback on offense a lot of the time.
Yeah.
He is not projected to play quarterback at Ohio State unless you're in some wildcat or red zone offense. Red zone offense. Oh, sorry, I got caught there. So we shall see. But Legend Bay, Mark, take it away.
Yeah. When we first started talking about him, and there's all this, like saying, recruiting drama, not too many kids get to have that kind of drama unless they do stuff like what you're about to see. We make all these films 2 minutes. Spoiler alert, every play is a touchdown. If we made another 2 minutes, spoiler alert, every play is a touchdown. He had over 4,000 yards rushing. He averaged 13 yards a carry this last year. He's simply the fastest guy in the field. 10-2, 100 meter, but it was wind dated. That's fine. But, it's obviously still blinding speed. He's a touches guy, whether you give him a couple wildcat snaps a game, whether he's your jet sweep guy in the slot, whether you're taking shots to him down the field, whether he's your punt returner, kick returner, whether you line him up at tailback and play him there for a while. You have to get this kid his 10 to 12 touches a game. If not, you turn him into a full-time player. I kind of said my thing. You don't want him to be a jack of all trades and never master one. Like, you want him to be a nuanced route runner, receiver that can put this track speed. And his track speed shows up on the field. He's not a track guy that when you're like, I don't see the speed. It's there. The Percy Harvin ability, maybe even Devin Hester ability in the return game. Throw out those types of Tavon Austins and those type of names where the quickness right there, and he's just as quick as he is fast. And sometimes there are players that are quick and not fast. Deebo Samuel is especially quick, but not really fast and the home run hitter type thing. He's got both, and I think as he gets bigger, he'll keep a little bit of this. I think he could probably get to maybe 190. If he's 175 right now, I don't think that's too tall of an ask, but anytime you're this explosive, some of it comes with being a little bit lighter framed, or Deion Sanders is famous for being very thin in the legs, and some other guys are that have this elite speed. That's a trait that kind of is a give take. But guys, I mean, I haven't broken down a player this explosive that comes to mind in a while. Like he really is worth the wait.
Define while.
Yeah, I mean, one of my comparisons, and I'm not going back this far just because it's been this long, but can he be Joey Galloway or Terry Glenn at receiver with that elite quickness and speed? And those guys weren't the tallest, fastest guy. I mean, he's got Chris Olave speed, and he's got way more quickness and jitter and, type of stuff like that in space. But to say someone who was this quick, I don't know if we've had, like Curtis Samuel wasn't this quick, and he was our gadget guy.
Curtis is more a faster Debo.
Yeah, I mean, and Ginn was more straight line. I mean, he's got Ginn speed, but he's got more jitter than Ginn and more, side to side. Then you start talking about running backs that are best running backs with jitter over the past couple of years. And, is the Travion Henderson, a little bit. He's got some of that juice. Now, Travion got a little thicker, and, he's not going to be that guy. But, like this kid is truly special. Travion Henderson's highlight film was off the charts. That was one of those, video game type things. I mean, he's like Bo Jackson.
Lines, though.
Yeah, I mean, so this kid has the straight line 100 speed, but he has the strong legs where when he changes direction and puts his foot in the ground, and we've seen 185, 190-pound running backs. We've seen that. It's not out of the question, and we've seen receivers in that mold. So you truly could get him on campus, but I'd like to see him do it all, because here's where the rub comes. Will he block at receiver? Will he pass protect as a running back? All these, like you start asking all those questions, you're like, whoa, what we see on film is explosion, speed, touchdowns, fun, but there's dirty work at every position, and he's going to have to pick some dirty work at one of these positions. He just can't be in the game specifically to touch the ball. That gets too obvious and predictable. To be an every down player and line up and do all the traits, that's where you truly become, scary.
He's in the jump cut Hall of Fame, by the way. That was incredible. Seriously, in terms of just the elusiveness.
And how good are his hands? That I put that in my thing. Like, we're in his development. Is he Featherstone, where he's going to catch the ball with his face mask? We didn't see a lot of him at receiver in high school, or defensive back. You could put him at defensive back tomorrow morning, and I would say a defensive back coach could have him on the field and pretty soon. I mean, he's got some agility and straight ahead speed. He's just a gifted athlete. Wherever he wanted to do, he could do.
Very impressive.
175 to 210 or 215.
That's a big gap.
Yeah, that's a lot of shoulders. That's a lot of booty. That's a lot of you're putting on weight, and you're just like packing it into the ribs. I mean, I think it would change who he is, and that's why I said there's a rub with these smaller, quicker athletes. They can sometimes. Here's the truth: is some of them will run a great track time, but go throw 8-12 pounds of football equipment on them, and they don't run the same. Their legs don't hold up with the extra pressure. They're so finely tuned. So you got to be careful how you add weight to these guys.
I definitely understand I think he could develop into an every down player, maybe in the slot. That's what I think would be his ultimate spot. I can just tell you this. You put him in motion, you're going to cause the defense to adjust. I remember when Reggie Bush joined the Saints for the first time, and Sean Payton used to just put him in motion, and you could see it's like when Steph Curry runs across the court, the entire court goes whoop. Bay is a one miss guy. You miss the tackle, it's 6. So we haven't really had a guy like that.
Yeah, I think he could be in contention to return kicks and return punts as a freshman too. I don't know if he'll be a big contributor on offense right away as a true freshman, outside of a few gadget plays here and there. But I mean, special teams. I mean, like you said, Mark, the guy's as electric as it comes with his agility and his get off and his explosion. I think he could factor into that competition, that punt returner and kick returner right away.
Can he catch it?
Yeah, Brass says he's 196, or he was recently quoted as saying 196. Now we hear 186. Whatever it was, did you guys see a 196-pound player on that film? Yeah, it just didn't. He just didn't come off that way, and that's why I would say at 186, I could maybe buy in at that. But he was listed at 175. They had him at 5'10 and a half, which that 0.5, when they throw that in there, you know he was measured somewhere, and that's plenty of height. I mean, could he play quarterback? He has an okay arm. He's not a driver of the ball. It would take some polish and some work, but there are probably quarterback coaches be like, I'll do it. I'll sign me up. That's how, great his feet are. But yeah, this weight thing right now is definitely, I don't want to be wrong on this, but I don't think we saw a player that was that big. If that is true, he's in the 195 already. Jeez, oh man. Yeah, NFL come calling. Your NFL size receiver tomorrow morning.
Question from Neil OSU. Can we get him and Jameer Brown on the field at the same time? Actually, no, that's been deemed illegal. Too fast. The Commission of Football has said, no, you cannot have two players on the field. It's something about the time-space continuum, Superman running back. And
that was like when Tecmo Bowl wanted to put two Bo Jacksons on the same team on Tecmo Bowl.
Tecmo Bowl is the classic throw-out for old dudes. And believe me, I could sit and talk Tecmo Bowl till the cows came home. Bo Jackson. The only person who could stop Bo Jackson, Lawrence Taylor. Lawrence Taylor on Tecmo Bowl literally would jump through the screen and put you in a headlock. Anyway, digressions. We know you love them, people. You've told us how much you love them. All right. Let's get on to some current events. So we're going to talk a little bit about Ohio State's opponent this weekend, and then we're going to talk about some wish lists when it comes to staffing and tomfoolery like that. Garrick, do you believe Ohio State on New Year's Eve will face Texas A&M or Miami, and why?
Yeah, it's a good question. When I look at these two teams, I think that they're very similar. And by that, I mean that they both have explosive wide receivers. They both are pretty solid up front on both sides of the ball. And they have two very turnover-prone quarterbacks. So factoring all that in, and a lot of them haven't really been challenged outside of one or two games. So the last time Texas A&M played a team that was capable of being on the same field as it didn't go very well, and Miami seems to play up or down to their competition. I'm telling you, I'm torn. I don't think that this is as easy as it appears, but I'm still going to go with A&M only because I believe in the explosion of Marcel Reed. He is a true dual threat quarterback that can beat you with his arm, beat you with his legs. Last year when Marcel Reed played, he was primarily a running threat, and he didn't really scare you a whole lot with his arm. But this year he's actually improved a lot as a passer, for my estimation. And compared to Carson Beck, where if you take the pass away from him, he's probably not going to beat you with his legs. And I've seen Carson Beck in big games before on a big stage. And it usually doesn't go all that well, especially against a defense that can match up with you in terms of personnel and talent. So I think it's going to be a great game. It arguably is going to be the best game of the playoff, depending on the aesthetic you like between Oklahoma and Alabama, because I think that game could be an ugly slop fest, like 17-13. But I think Miami, Texas A&M could be a little more fun, more like 31-27, somewhere around there. But ultimately, I think I'm going with A&M just because I like the different ways that they can beat you on offense. They have a lot of explosive receivers. I like their offensive line up front. As long as Marcel Reed takes care of the ball, which, again, big if. He's given the ball away a lot recently. But I think they should be able to do enough as long as they're forcing turnovers on Carson Beck.
In terms of NFL prospects, this is the game you want to watch for line play on both sides. I don't really have a great vibe, just me personally. One thing I love about these games is I do think you get everyone's best punch. They're rested, they're relaxed, they've had an extra couple weeks with the film, you know what I'm saying? So managing distractions, of course, is important, but you'll get their best punches. Mark your vibe as we head into the weekend.
I always turn to Vegas when I'm not an expert, and Vegas, has Texas A&M minus 3.5, largely due to that home field advantage. That's,
usually 3 points.
Yeah, and I mean that's get off. I mean, if the crowd's loud and it's a great atmosphere, you're going to screw with the get off of the other team, and that is an advantage. And that's historically why home fields get that. I think Miami's the more explosive team, and they could get you. They're like that puncher that could slip you with a right early and be like, wow, but I don't know how many times they can do that. The over-under is in the 50s, so there's going to be points. They don't expect, these defenses to shut things up. But I think Dan's right with those offense, defensive lines. That gives the advantage to Texas. I think I would go with Texas, but for some reason, I'm scared of Miami. Like, that's the team that I probably don't want Ohio State to have to play, because those teams get hot, and when they start getting hot and that speed gets you, that could cause problems. We saw Indiana with some one-on-ones put us in some spots and win some 50-50s. I didn't like that. I'd rather see the grinder team that's going to try to line up and pound us and run it. And, I know they have an explosive playmaker, Garrick, you mentioned, but for some reason, as an evaluator or as a talent guy, I stay away from freakish fast talent if I can.
The thing that might give the edge to A&M is coaching, because I trust Mike Elko in a big game far more than I trust Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal, if you remember last year, lost a game that probably 135 out of 136 FBS coaches would have won. And by that, I mean he called a running play with 40 seconds left and the other team didn't have a timeout and the running back fumbled. So this is and then Georgia Tech ultimately won. So, you win that game 100 out of 100 times if you would just do what the analytics tell you to do there. But Mario Cristobal is arguably the worst clock management coach in all of college football. I'm sure he's hired a team of analysts to help clean that up after that disaster. But listen, playoffs, especially with two teams as evenly matched as this, are going to be one-score games more than likely, or at least very competitive down to the wire. And when that, you want a guy that is proven to be composed in those situations. And I just cannot for the life of me think that Mario Cristobal is going to rise to the occasion and be composed when you need him to make a smart clock management decision or make a crucial late game decision either. So I'm giving the edge in coaching day, and I'm here too.
I think if you combo in the quarterback, Beck, who is known for, when did Miami play their best football? I think it was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, their best wins against Notre Dame, which was weird.
Yeah, when you think back of when they played the best. And Carson Beck, to me, is like that guy in the third quarter. You just know if your defense leans on him enough, he is going to give you a couple chances. He's going to throw two into the crowd. His best throw of the year, I think he had his eyes closed, if you remember it. I think it was to CJ, whatever his name is, in the end zone in one of those earlier games. And he got a lot of credit for it, which is great. But he just chucked that thing into traffic. It's like your Bears quarterback pass over the weekend that he just literally threw as hard as he could into traffic. DJ Moore caught it, and they're ready to anoint your boy.
Hey, it's fun if it works.
It is. Carson Beck, it usually doesn't work, is kind of what I'm saying. It worked that one time. That is something. And I'll say this. I'm a draft geek. When you start talking about, Mark said something about he returns to Vegas. I kind of feel that way about college football with the draft in terms of talent assessment. It's like you can talk all you want, but eventually it's like who has the most high quality NFL players usually wins. If you look at the teams, Ohio State is loaded with NFL players compared to the others. Keep this in mind. ESPN did I'll give them credit. They did an excellent story that you should check out, where they went through all the playoff teams and said, of the guys who are draft eligible, what round are they currently projected in? So you see, okay, this one team had 2 first-round picks and 2 guys in the second round. So Ohio State had 5 guys in the first round and 4 guys in the second round. And by the way, the 2 guys who would likely get picked first over all of them aren't draft eligible. We have way more NFL talent than anybody else. I came out of it. We better win the title this year. I'm not sure. Last year was the first year, and I've said this, that I really thought we really actually had clearly the best roster. There were times in the past I thought they were championship worthy. Of course, they've won them, but there was always like Joey B hanging out there with his LSU team, or the Trevor Lawrence or Georgia. We have the most talent. I'm not sure that's not something that's easy to do. So next year, even if we had the most talent this year, odds are we won't next year. The way things are moving, they got to win it. This is the time to win it. Although I will say I've looked. I think our entire offense might be coming back except Carnell Tate, which, by the way, would give us a chance to score some points. Yes, 4 high first rounders. But I'm telling you, if you look at mock drafts, 9 different Buckeyes, it's either 8 or 9, have been projected in someone's first round. Now, I'm not saying that's all accurate, but you look at Mel Kiper has top safety, Caleb Downs, top defensive tackle, Caden McDonald, top linebacker, Arvell Reese, number 2 linebacker, Sonny Styles, number 1 receiver, Carnell Tate. We really need to do this.
I'm looking at
Greg. Hey, hold on a sec. This is a good point. And you're right. The most high-quality players didn't work against Indiana. That is accurate. I honestly believe on a neutral field with 2 weeks to get ready or something, Ohio State will whack Indiana. That's just my opinion. They scored 13 points. I don't think Ohio State's going to score 10 points. All right.
I was going to say between Miami and Texas A&M, they have 7 NFL draft picks. Maybe a first rounder for Texas A&M and maybe 2 first rounders for Miami. So there's
maybe.
2 teams. Yeah, that's what they're just based on, like you said, none of the stuff's in stone, but yeah, Ohio State has more than those 2 teams combined. And yeah, this Indiana game, like I said, I was thinking that in my head. I'm like, well, if someone's going to point out the day end that Indiana didn't have a bunch of NFL guys, but I said this at the beginning of the year. Football's a game where it's a confluence of events that can affect any great team. I don't care how many first-round picks, top guys you have. Football's just one of those games where that clock can go against you, turnover, and misfield, whatever it is, going for it on 4th down. Those confluences of events take down many a teams throughout the years. Ask Tom Brady ask the Vikings when they missed a field goal. Ask all these teams that had these runs that were forever. What took them down? Not a better team. A confluence of weird events. Now, to Dan's point, can Indiana have a confluence of those events again, which is very rare the second time in a year? Yeah, you get those teams once. Like you're saying, when they're signing day week and there's 90 other things going on and the other team's Super Bowl, okay. So not to be the Ohio State homer, but and give Indiana a ton of credit. But yeah, again, I'm with Dan. I'm putting money on the Buck. I'll bet my second game of the year if Indiana and Ohio State play again.
Dan, what's your take on A&M Miami?
Man, I am so out on Carson Beck. There's something about him that makes me uncomfortable. I am a double standard guy completely for quarterbacks. Completely. Like I don't mind. Like I don't mind guys who celebrate. I don't mind guys who are. I believe one coach told me you got to have a few guys on the team you wouldn't let date your sister. That kind of thing. I love Charles Haley. He was that guy. Believe me. But they just make me uncomfortable. And if I ever was going to think about Miami, your Mario Cristobal chatter there certainly finalized it to me. I think Elko is actually a really good coach. South Brunswick native. Shout out to Dwayne Haskins. Yeah. So I just, when you have extra time to prepare, the closer you get to the game, I start to think, okay, you're more and more healthy and you're better coached and you're better prepared. I would go with Texas A&M. And then you say they're at home. Yeah, I'd be surprised if Miami won this game. Now, they do have is Malachi Corley, the freshman, who is spectacular. They got Ruben Bain, who I think is a really good player, but I think Miami, there are more counterfeit tendencies there to me than Texas A&M. I will say this. Marcel Reed is one of those guys where if you force him to be in obvious passing situations, and you can hold up in the secondary, you're in really good shape. He is not a classic drop back quarterback. So yeah, very interesting because the quarterbacks are so different. But if I had to, I'll go with the home team just for that. Good one. All right, we're going to discuss this real quick. We have some other questions on here we will get to. If you guys have any other questions, please do it. I agree with this. Indy wasn't a player win. It was a coaching win. Cignetti started planning at halftime of last year. I will say this. I don't think Cignetti slept one night since that game. We whacked them last year. We didn't have a little bit of juice for Ohio State. And I said this on yesterday's show. The most fascinating game to me is going to be Oklahoma or Alabama versus Indiana. I think that's Indiana as a football program taking another team's real best punch for the first time ever. If you think about it, they're going to be the hunted. They're going to be the favored. They're going to be the one to bring the pelt on the wall. I don't think they got that effort from Ohio State, and that would have been the first time they could have gotten it. Keep in mind, Indiana, I don't have the stats. They're one of the worst programs in the history of college football. That's like factual. I think have they lost the most games? Are they in the mix for that? Or
I think that's true. I think somewhere around there.
Indiana beat. You're talking like they're like decades, and
they used the number of 700 losses to say they have the most losses. I don't know if they have the worst loss percentage, or maybe they've been playing for 20 more years than everybody else. But it was just on 60 Minutes, over 700 losses, and they called that the losingest program in college football, and that's nothing to be proud of.
I think you summed it up right it was just on 60 Minutes.
There you go.
It was such a freak show is not the right word. It's such an aberration in football that Indiana football was on 60 Minutes. Go get a list of sporting things that are talked about on 60 Minutes. Usually you got to have the cigarette letters so funny you think you ought to know that. That's a Saturday night.
And I know a lot about losing college football programs because I played for one where my record in 5 years was 5-49-1, which I think is the worst in 5 years ever. So I always thought I was the losingest college football
program. Had to get a fifth year of it, huh?
Yeah, I had to get a fifth year.
Wasn't enough.
I include the freshman year when we were 1-11, and I had to stand there. But and someone, this is a little bit of digression before we get into the coaches, was like, where did I coach? Because they like the breakdowns or whatever. I don't know if it's where I coached. It's who I coached. I coached 7th and 8th grade. I coached freshmen. I coached flag football teams, young kids. And one day I was kind of thinking, why can I do these breakdowns and, convey myself or articulate myself? When you're teaching little kids, you're explaining these big concepts and you're trying to break it down so young kids can understand it. I think that's kind of what these breakdowns are when I do, as far as I can explain maybe college terminology. And in college, that's why I'm bringing it up, is I had 4 or 5 different coordinators. When you lose every year, new coordinators come in, new systems come in. So I know option, I know spread, I know power run. I know all the different defenses that come in and what we saw every day. Plus, I've had to translate it to young kids or translate it to women that are following or people who don't have that background. I always think most of our fans, they probably played in high school. A lot of these Bucknutters, some of them 7th, 8th grade. If we got some college guys in there, I can tell. And I always worry there's some coaches in here. They're like, Mark, you're, breaking this down to whatever. But I think that's the key, is I've had to teach young kids so much that I treat these people like young kids and explain it in that type of way and use the most common terminologies and not these real I see people giving out geeky concepts all the time on TV, and I'm like, that's great, that, but nobody knows what the smash concept is or the mesh concept. They throw out big words, and I think that's where
coaches
is the key.
Coaches have a lot of information in their brains, and and I've been doing this for 30 years. You can talk to them; they're genius level. All that matters is can you get that information into the player's head and have them use it when the situation arises.
It's not
because you can go ace the test, a written test. If you can't get your underling or the player to do it or understand it, you're screwed. Here's my quick story. I helped coach my son's youth football teams. He was, of course, the quarterback because I was the coach and gerrymandered it all. We had a blindside situation. if you watch The Blind Side, we had a kid who lived in the town and looked exactly like that. Same deal. Didn't know anything about football. First scrimmage, he's the left tackle. We run a play, yada, yada. Second time we run the play, I say, hey, in this play, instead of taking the guy in front of you, I want you to go to the second level and actually try and clip the linebacker. He says, okay. We run the play. He runs the opposite direction. He comes back to the huddle and like, you don't know what a linebacker is, do you? He's like, I have no idea. So you got to be basic. It's got to be built from the start.
It's not what I know, or it's when I was coaching, it's what your team knows.
Correct.
You know, and there's a lot of coaches, and just another digression, they assume that players know everything. You know, they assume that when I'm not going to go any more on this, but I think that's the thing right there is your players have to know what you know and how fast can you inject it into them. My first couple of weeks, every year I'm coaching like camp or whatever, I go hoarse because I'm just nonstop verbal garbage the whole time, making sure everyone's heard the master of the obvious because they haven't. They literally haven't.
Bill Kurlick used to make this point. The greatest basketball coach of all time, John Wooden at UCLA, every year, the first practice, how to put your socks on and how to tie your shoes without getting a blister. Every year, the basics. So, all right, good times. Question. Ohio State's going to have to replace coaches. We know now of the coaches they have to replace. Who knows how many they'll have to replace when the die is cast. But right now we know they're going to need a new offensive coordinator, a new wide receivers coach. Garrick, if you were pulling the strings with Ryan Day, who would be in those spots?
Well, number one, I'm glad that I'm not because he's much more qualified than I am to make these decisions. But playing Ryan Day for a day, if you see what I did there. But I would hire Brian Dable to be offensive coordinator. And I know a lot of people will scoff at that because
I'm out. Not everyone knows who that is. So give a quick background.
Well, yep. As I was just about to say, people will scoff at that because Brian Dable is the now failed former head coach of the New York Giants, who used to be the hottest offensive coordinator on the name a couple years ago, back when he was leading Josh Allen to greatness. And granted, Josh Allen could probably make a lot of offensive coordinators look very smart. But I'm going with Brian Dable, but it's also an asterisk attached to it, meaning someone of that ilk, like an established NFL play caller. Because if you go last year, Chip Kelly was just a savant outside of that one game that Dan doesn't need to be reminded about. That Rose Bowl game, that whole playoff run was just a masterpiece of offensive work. And I think that sometimes when things don't work out for coaches in the NFL and they get a reprieve in the college, the NFL coaches, in terms of schematics and pure play calling, usually have a leg up on 95% of college coaches. Now, if you were hiring somebody like Dable or another offensive coordinator to run an entire program and manage the modern NIL era, that's a completely different story, and I wouldn't want to touch that. But if you're talking about somebody to run an offense specifically, I think Brian Dable or somebody of that ilk would do just fine. I know Dable specifically is he likes to get after you. So does Ryan Day. That's a culture that has been built and established at Ohio State. And honestly, I think that Ohio State's offensive players welcome that. They love being challenged. And the other thing about Dable, some people say, well, he may only be here for a year. Well, great. That means that he's done awesome. And he's not coming in to install an entire new offense. He's coming in to run Ryan Day's offense and install some of his own concepts on top of it, like Chip Kelly did. That's what I would do. And then personally, I would shift Keenan Bailey. If we're going with the Brian Dable strategy, I would shift Keenan Bailey from tight ends to wide receivers coach. A lot of people forget that when Keenan Bailey was coming up, he helped Brian Hartline a lot recruit all these wide receivers. I remember specifically Carnell Tate mentioning Keenan Bailey.
Coach Key.
Yep.
They'd always say Coach Key. Also, yep. Coach Key. Don't forget Coach Key. Seriously.
Yep. Carnell Tate went out of his way on Twitter to be like, yes, I want to come play for Brian Hartline, but do not underestimate the impact that Keenan Bailey had on myself, Brandon Innes, everyone's recruitments of why we're coming to Ohio State. I think that, and even talking to tight ends now, like Brock Williams' example, a top flight 2027 tight end that's going to make a college decision either this month or next month. Depends on when he gets that finalized. But they just say, yeah, he feels like a second uncle to them, more or less. But he's also going to, he's going to hold you accountable, but he also feels like family. And I think that if you did kind of what they did for Tyler Bowen on the offensive line room, because the analyst rule is you can basically have as many analysts as you want now. So if you hire some established wide receiver coach developers, bring in like 2 of those guys, and then have Keenan Bailey also be a developer of the position, but then also be the lead recruiter for that position, I don't think you would lose much. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to keep the Brian Hartline track record alive and produce a first-round wide receiver every single year. I mean, guys, I think we take it for granted at this point, but that just doesn't happen. But they're still going to get elite talent, and I think that Keenan Bailey would keep bringing elite talent to Columbus if he switched over to wide receivers. And then in that situation, just have Brian Dable work with the tight ends or something like that. And then there you go. That's what I would do.
Brian Dable has coached in college as an offensive coordinator for 1 season. It was 2017. It was at Alabama, and they won the national championship. Mark, your choice.
This coaching thing is a cosmetic beauty pageant, and it always has been. It's funny, when Dable was hot as can be after he got done working with Josh Allen when he went to the Giants. Chip Kelly his name is mud after being fired. We don't want him back. I don't think we would have wanted Matt Patricia the day he got fired from the Detroit Lions. His name was dirt. Okay. And so I think these guys are all great coaches, and they kind of ride these waves of the hand they're dealt, the injuries they're dealt, the project they're trying to reclamate, or the conference they're in. And it's not always about are they good or bad. Now, when any of these coaches gets a hold of the talent available to them at Ohio State, their IQ goes through the charts, or they just get back to their fullest potential. So I try not to say, oh my gosh, like when he threw Dayball out, I was in the same mindset as Garrick, that if I know Day, he has a bunch of NFL friends and he knows someone there that can come in and help with receivers or be an OC tomorrow morning. And it might not be who we think or even on the board. And I know Dayball's been thrown out there, but it's that type. He's a great coach, and he's got some fire to him. But I think this gets too cosmetic, where you're looking for these hot names. I see people are like, oh, we need someone to recruit, or we need someone that could just drop off a bag. The recruiting isn't always what it was. And I know Chip Kelly hated recruiting famously, and that can't be part of your DNA, I guess.
What's his complaint about the Raiders then? He hated coaching. All right, that didn't go
well. Like coaching either. Yeah. And again, I said that offensive line was hot mess the whole year. Nobody could have coached behind. They still can't get anything going, even though he's gone. But yeah, Ryan Day coaching rehab center is a pretty accurate way. Come to Ohio State with me, be the guy I know you are, and we have the horses that will run right for you. I'm not really worried about this as much as everybody else. I'd rather see us focus on the last 4 games and worry about this after the season. Just dance with the people who brought you right now. Keep the momentum in the building, keep the terminology and everything you're using, the ideas in the building. But there is no front runner. I saw Mike Shanahan like he's going to leave Indiana right now when they're just, getting to the same footing. It's tough call.
I'm with one of our commenters, Mark Porter, Grand Poobah for Ohio State offensive coordinator. Sign him up. Let's go.
I would love that.
I like quality control. The guy who, like Joe Philbin just kind of stands there quietly, and like every now and then I throw a penny in. There you go.
It's all. I'll end with this. The term consultant came up a while back, and my younger brother wanted to be a consultant, and my dad's like, "What do you think that is?" He's like, "I'd like to be a consultant for Ford." And he's like, "I'll just sit at the end of the hallway and you come bring me pictures of cars and I'll consult you as to whether it's good or not." I'm like, "That's not what a consultant is. That's called the owner." All right. We've gone on forever. One thing we do know is Day has been in this position before and has responded beautifully. We had Bill O'Brien for about 15 minutes and he replaced him with Chip Kelly. Mike Vrabel, though he was not hired by this regime, was here. So if you want to get to the NFL and need to make a pit stop, come to Columbus. Have a good one, Nutters.